Here are some behavioral principles. Non-slip flooring on things like scales, squeeze chutes, in front of the squeeze chute, stun boxes. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of a non-slip floor. They panic when they start to slip. No sudden jerky motion. A lot of sudden jerky motion like this scares. And when I was out on the movie site, they had this big camera on a boom that would just float like this. And they call it a giraffe with a hot head with fluid motion control wheels. And some of the one scene in there was filmed down at Sam Cain plant in Corpus Christi. And they just took that camera and floated it over the top of the cat. And they didn't even know it was there. You know, you got to get all the people hidden, but that kind of smooth movement had no effect. Reflector boards, that's another issue, because I had a tame Halterbroke heifer nearly jump on my head during a publicity picture because a grip suddenly moved a 4x8 white reflector board. Well, they thought that since the cattle tolerated white panel truck, that'd be the same as a reflector board. Think about it. The animal's a visual thinker. White panel truck moves totally differently. It makes a noise, which a reflector board doesn't. And it doesn't move the jerky way that somebody would move this big 4x8 white panel around. No, they weren't trained to that. You know, you all have seen the thing, people say, well, my horse was fine at home, and then when I went to a show, my horse went absolutely berserk. Well, there's things at the show he may not have seen at home. Stuff like balloons and flags. Also, a mistake that people make when they're restraining an animal is when it struggles to squish it tighter. And on animals like bison, sometimes they're calmer if you blindfold. But you got to use something that's totally opaque. Now, we did some of the very first research on cattle temperament. And we found that animals that jumped all around in the squeeze chute had lower weight gain and more dark color meat quality problems. When I first did this research, they thought we were nuts. Now, there's been a lot of research now done here on exit speed scoring. Instead of looking at how much the animal jumps around in the squeeze chute, you look at how fast they come out. That actually works a bit better than the squeeze chute scoring. And if you're going to do the chute scoring, it works better in some rattle-trap old manual chute than it does in a hydraulic chute that holds the animal really tightly. But again, when I worked on this was pioneering stuff. I always liked doing the original stuff. You know, the stuff that other people hadn't done yet. Okay, this is an important slide to get across an important concept. And the concept is when you force animals to do things, you get a lot of fear stress, get a lot of stress hormones. And when animals voluntarily cooperate, you don't get that fear stress. That's one of the reasons why in a lot of low-stress handling clinics, there's an emphasis on taking the young heifers, walk them through the corrals, walk them through the squeeze chute, get them used to some of this stuff. Because when you just take beef cattle and rough them way up, you're going to get really high levels of cortisol. There's beef cattle quiet handling. But then look down there at a trained antelope. I worked at the Denver Zoo with Dr. Nancy Earlbeck on training antelopes to cooperate during blood sampling. Well, nobody thought we'd be able to do that. They said, you're crazy, you'll never train antelopes. Well, we got them trained. And it takes you 10 days just to train them that a door can slide up and down and not be scary. So for the first day, I move the door an inch and they orient. And when that animal orients, the brain makes a decision. Do I keep watching or do I do a big fear explosion thing? So you have to be very, very, very careful not to push past that orienting phase. Next day, we move the 2 inches. Yeah, they're very flighty. You got to habituate very, very slowly and carefully. And they're really tuned into anything that's novel. Like one time a video camera was brought in that made a different sound. Boy, they were right on that, watching that. First experiences with new people, places, or equipment need to be good. Because if that horse's first experience with that horse trailer is bad, they're not going to want to go in that horse trailer. You know, first experiences when they're bad can make a really big, bad, negative impression. So let's work on getting good first experiences. So one question I might get asked, well, what about baby calves and your ear-tagging day-old calf? I don't think that young they can remember. But I know that a 3-month-old calf certainly is very capable of remembering. And they're going to remember things as pictures. Like certain kind of truck associated with something good or bad, or a certain sound associated with something good or bad. And just to show you that things that are new, if the animal can approach it voluntarily, then something that's new is attractive. That's the paradox of novelty. New things are attractive when they can voluntarily approach, and they're scary when you just shove it in their face. We call that the paradox of novelty. And these cattle, then the wind would blow the paper, the cattle would jump back, and I'd go, that's kind of weird. They're like curiously afraid. It was like they're oscillating back and forth between fear and approach. Well, now, in the last 3 years, there's been some NIH research. It was drug addiction research, where the switch in the brain, the nucleus accumbens, has been found. It switches back and forth between fear or seek. And I had a situation where I avoided a very, very bad car accident where this happened to me. I was driving along, minding my business in the right-hand lane of the highway. And a little low trailer passes me, and a big 2x6 slides off this trailer. And I'm locked onto it. And I'm watching this board kind of floating across the highway. And I move the car over, and I move the car over onto the rumble strip, and I managed to straddle the board and not hit it, and I wasn't scared. Then as soon as I had avoided the board, boom, switched. Heart pounding, swear words coming out. Won't repeat those, but tons of swear words coming out. My brain had switched from seek to fear. And when I bring this story up, other people will come up to me, and I had a lady come up to me, and she says, oh, I was behind a truck, and they had junked cars on it, and a car hood flew off. And she'd had the same kind of experience.